Welcome back to Pro-Life Without Borders with Sarah and Mikayla. This is part 2 of our episode on euthanasia. Please email us questions, comments, concerns. We are happy to do more on this, and we will. Regardless, we will. Because this is such an important topic, and it's one that honestly not enough people are talking about. And it's one that we all are going to have to deal with. End-of-life care is something all of us are going to have to deal with in some form or fashion. And so having the words and having the foundation to deal with it is extremely important. So last week we talked about the book Final Exit, and we talked about Forced Exit. Highly recommend that you buy Forced Exit by Wesley Smith and read it. It is a lot. It's heavy. But it's also worth it, and it's very, very eye-opening. He's also done, if you're not a reader, he's done some YouTube videos, and he speaks. So I'm sure that there's stuff online that you can find with him as well. Another person who's great to talk about the euthanasia issue is Stephanie Gray. So she's a former Canadian. I think she's an American now.
Former Canadian?
She got better.
She used to be Canadian, but not anymore.
Well, I don't think she is. I think she's American now.
She's as
American as you are.
I'm an American. I literally just took a picture of my passport this morning. I am an American.
Sure. She is. I'm kidding. She was just raised overseas, so I make fun of her. I also make fun of her for other stuff. So you can look up Stephanie Gray and euthanasia on YouTube, and there's some great stuff on there as well. And that will get you right down the rabbit hole, and you'll have tons of information. You'll be teaching us next time. Also, Stephanie Gray, if you're watching this and you want to be on our podcast, because she's so cool. She's so cool. Okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about involuntary euthanasia, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how you can walk through end-of-life care with your loved one, or how you can prepare for end-of-life care for yourself. So last week we talked about more or less, I'm going to call it more or less voluntary euthanasia, because I don't believe it's ever truly voluntary. And you can fight me. I mean, not really.
I was like,
You can call me and we can discuss it with love in our heads.
Depending on the day, I'd fight somebody. I feel like fighting someone today, but I've been fired up all day, so I'm like, I'll throw hands.
Yeah, and then you'll get here.
Catch me outside.
You'll get here, and we'll both be really lazy that day. And you'll be like, I'm here, and we'll be like, no.
Wait, no, that was Tuesday. That was a totally different vibe.
We just want to sit around and eat little squishy worms now. Little trolley fruits.
Yeah, my gummy worms. Yeah, I know, because now I don't have any more.
Listen,
I'm like, my gummy worms are gone.
I only eat a few. I would never eat the last one because I wouldn't want you to know that I was going into your office and eating your gummy worms when you weren't here.
My gummy worm stash is depleted. But anyway, we're here to talk about euthanasia, not gummy worms.
So if you would like to make a donation to princessoflightnetwork.org/donate to replace Mikayla's trolley gummy worms. It won't work.
The big bag.
It won't work because I'll just use it for operating expenses. I'm not buying her gummy worms.
I think the gummy worms are an operating expense.
Listen, okay, so this tells you...
If you want your staff to save babies, I need my desk gummy worms.
Yeah, get your own. So
I did, and you ate them!
So the best part is, we're so frugal.
It's like, what operating expenses?
We're so frugal. We buy, snacks for the walk.
Yeah.
For the runners, because we don't want people to pass out. So they run.
It's typically a good
So they run, and then we bring them bananas and granola bars and little applesauce cups. Yeah. And so everyone is super nervous about taking the leftovers home. Is it okay? Is it okay if I take these 8 bananas home? Because obviously we can't leave them in the office. They're gonna go bad.
Yeah.
And what are we gonna do? Flag down random pregnant people and offer them bananas? So people are always very cautious about taking things home, to the point where things will actually sit in the staff fridge and go bad because nobody wanted to take it home, because nobody wanted to become a stealer.
Yeah.
As we mentioned last week, stealery from the center. But we have the applesauce cups sitting in our big room, our kind of entry area and no one will eat them. I eating them.
I've been eating them.
Oh, me too. No, but nobody else is eating them because they're I don't know what those are for. And I'm please eat the applesauce cups.
Yeah, no, I had one the other day.
No, I love them.
They're name brand applesauce.
They're
too.
Mott's.
Yeah, I was it's Mott's.
Somebody sprang for the real applesauce cups. And they are delicious.
They're great. And I know we drank up all the Gatorade.
We
Gatorade's
did.
gone.
And we drank all the Capri Suns.
Oh, did we? Yeah, we did.
Everybody really, that was probably mostly
I love
you.
Capri
I love
Suns.
a good Capri Sun. But then somebody donated, one of our staff members got like the baked Cheetos delivered to her house, and she was supposed to get something else. And so she brought it to the office, and I put them in the kitchen, and I think nobody besides me knows that they're in there, and I indulge in a little thing of baked Cheetos like every time I go down to Newcastle.
I don't know that I've ever had baked Cheetos.
They're really good, and they're like not as like overly cheesy.
Well, that's disappointing. That's the best part.
Right, but it doesn't get all over your fingers.
Again, that's the best part.
So
What's
I don't know
if you don't have to like scrape bright orange food dye off your thumb with your teeth.
I don't know if I'm not sharing, like if other people would eat them if they knew they were there, but I'm also not inquiring. I just sneak into the kitchen and like.
I guess we're about to find out how many staff watch our podcast.
Right. If I go on Monday and all the baked Cheetos are gone.
There's a baked Cheeto stash.
It's in the kitchen in Newcastle if you want them. I will share.
Anyway, we're also here not to talk about baked Cheeto stashes. Right. But
we're here to talk about involuntary. This is it. I'd rather talk about trolley fruits, but that's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about physician-assisted suicide where the victim presumably is consenting.
Yes.
But then we have this other side of euthanasia where people are unable or unwilling to consent. And the hallmark, like the one that everyone goes back to, is the Terry Schiavo case. Okay. So Terry Schiavo was a young woman, and she was believed to be in a persistent vegetative state following a cardiac arrest in 1990.
Right.
And I'm saying believed to be because there was a significant amount of debate where her spouse, or he was still her spouse, he wasn't like an ex, was he?
I think they were still married.
Yeah. Was saying that she was in a persistent vegetative state. Her parents were saying that she was not, that she was responding, and that she was aware. Okay. So it's a very hotly debated topic. How aware was she? How much did she know? Okay. So she was breathing on her own, but she did require the use of a feeding tube. So that was the only support she was getting, was a feeding tube and like physical care.
That's pretty. I mean, I don't want to like play down the situation.
I mean, speaking of someone whose child is on a feeding tube,
I was about to say
it's not that big of a deal.
I actually have several like friends or like their babies who have feeding tubes, and it's really like they would tell you it's just really not that big of a deal.
Right. And obviously she was not walking around and like communicating and those kinds of things, but like just the feeding tube on its own is not an obscene level of support.
No. Yeah. Like a lot of people have feeding tubes or some other form of like nutrition supplement, I'll put it that way.
Yes. So Terry's husband wanted the feeding tube removed. Her parents wanted it to stay. The courts ruled in favor of her husband. And so even though she was unable to consent, they removed her feeding tube and she basically died of dehydration and starvation, which is a very, very painful way to lose your life.
Yeah, that's a very miserable, not that I've ever starved to death, but I've heard that is just...
It's very painful.
Yeah, because it's very slow.
And it's very slow.
And it's just one thing shutting down after the other. Like it is not quick.
Right.
It is not compassionate, shall we say.
No, it's not. And that is happening more than we think it is. Yeah. So the Terry Schiavo case is one that was very highly publicized. It's still talked about. Father Frank Pavone was actually there at her bedside.
Oh, I didn't know that.
he has some very, very honestly disturbing things to share about how things went down in the last days. But Derek Humphrey writes in his book, Final Exit, "Take it from me, many hundreds of cases of active and passive euthanasia go undetected and unreported."
That's not the comfort that I think he thought it.
No, it's not.
Like, that is not a bragging point, my dude. So
we're talking about people like Terry Schiavo, who are supposedly in a vegetative state and they're refused food, water, fluids, nutrition. Where you can it's involuntary euthanasia if you cover people with disabilities, the elderly who are not able to consent for whatever reason.
You also think of people who are nonverbal for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
Like, I think of people who have autism. I know people who have, like, severe, we would say complex PTSD, who are nonverbal. Like, just because you're nonverbal doesn't mean that euthanasia is.
Right. And just because someone else has medical power of attorney over you doesn't mean that that's okay, that someone else can make that decision.
Yeah.
So a historical case of euthanasia is actually Baby Nauer. Okay, so Nauer, Nauer. He was one of the first victims of the Holocaust. Baby Nauer was born blind and missing his leg and part of his arm. And his parents were ashamed of this because they were in the sort of Hitler,
everyone has to be perfect,
yes.
white, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yep, you have to be pure, and you don't want to perpetuate these negative
gene pool.
genes, yes, all that stuff. Okay. So they were ashamed. They brought what was called a useless eater into this world, and they asked permission to have him put to sleep. And the permission was granted by Hitler himself.
Okay. I put my cat to sleep.
Yes.
Because he was suffering. He had kidney failure, and it just kept going on.
And because he's
a cat. He was very dramatic about it. Like, he was not going quietly. And I was like, Gus, buddy, it's time. And he was suffering. And so I put my cat, who has no soul, and I know that that's a controversial statement.
We'll talk about that in another episode.
We're going to get into, and he is also, I loved him dearly, and I miss him all of the time. He was not my child. He was literally a cat.
Right.
And I love cats. But I put my cat to sleep. You do not put your literal infant to sleep.
No, especially, he was blind, missing his leg and part of his arm.
Okay.
You can live life
like
blind.
There's a ton of blind people.
Yes, missing.
There are people who don't have any limbs, and they live fantastic lives.
Jeremiah is quite likely blind. My baby.
Yeah.
My baby. Nobody's put him to sleep.
No, he's just living his life.
No, and he needs medical care and he needs support, and he's going to get it because his life is worth living. Even though it's maybe harder than I wish it was. Like, I wish I could wave my magic wand.
I'm sure every mother doesn't want to see their kid have anything wrong with them.
Right.
And also, I feel like anything Hitler is signing off on is probably not the standard that society should take.
If your theory of end-of-life care is allied with Hitler's, you should revise your theory on end-of-life care.
It's probably not solid.
It's definitely not solid. So euthanasia is wrong. I don't care if someone is choosing it. Again, I don't think you can really choose it, but if someone is choosing it, it's wrong. I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are listening. If it's involuntary euthanasia, it is absolutely wrong. But let's talk for just a couple of minutes about how do we deal with dying? Okay, because now we have this question. If euthanasia is wrong, where is the line? Mm-hmm. When is it okay to refuse treatment?
Because we do believe in, we don't want people to suffer.
Right.
And that's, I think, an admirable quality.
Yeah,
we're not saying...
Christians should not want people to suffer.
No, you shouldn't want people to suffer.
Wait, why did I have to say that?
But like you said last week, there is this idea that either you support euthanasia and we just kill people, or people are going to suffer and have terrible lives.
Right.
And there's this whole in between that no one is talking about. And so now people don't know how to make decisions in that in between. It's just either you're suffering or we kill you.
Right.
That's it.
And the thing is, people can decide for their loved ones or for themselves not to pursue medical treatments.
Yeah.
You can say, I am not going through chemo again. Yeah. I'm not doing it. Or wherever. You can say, I have, and these are hard decisions. I'm not trying to minimize them at all. But someone could say, I'm not going through chemo. I'm just throwing this out there. I'm 85. I would rather have 6 good months than a year and a half that is terrible.
Yeah.
I don't want to do chemo. There are individuals who say, I have ALS and I don't want a breathing tube. Mm-hmm. That's okay. There are people who say, okay, my loved one is on a breathing tube. They've been on a ventilator for a week. They're not getting better. This is just keeping them alive. This is prolonging their death, not prolonging their life. And we're going to remove the ventilator. Mm-hmm. But there are some things that people cannot ethically be denied. Right. Water, food, warmth, basic oxygen. I would even go as far to say that an oxygen through a cannula should not be denied. I understand that there's actually some controversy on that.
Yeah.
But I think that a minimal amount of oxygen to make yourself comfortable should not be denied. Comfort care for pain is okay. Giving mega doses to hasten death, not okay.
Right. And I actually just had a conversation with someone about that yesterday. About the whole pain medicine thing. Because I think a lot of people assume that those of us who are against euthanasia, we're like, well, like, we're told, like, let them be in pain. Like, that's absolutely
it's
not
absolutely
what we're
not true.
saying. Like, give them the morphine that they need to feel comfortable. Like, and if I were in pain, if I were dying, and if I were in pain, I would absolutely want whoever's making my medical decisions, like, give me the opioids. Like, I don't want to feel this.
Right. Because it can be hard.
Yeah, and that's 100% okay. But she was talking about, and she works in a healthcare setting, that there are some nurses and doctors who will give way more pain medicine than necessary. And it actually, like, hastens death. And she was really struggling with, like, and she was a nurse, so administering, like, this medicine, knowing that it was way too much.
Right.
And that they didn't need X amount of this.
And people do develop a certain amount of tolerance.
Absolutely.
If they've been using it for a while. We're not saying that. But we're saying there's lines. And some of it questions need to be asked. When my grandmother was passing away, like, when she died, she had a bottle of water on her end table. She had a sandwich. She didn't want to eat because a lot of times towards the end of life people don't, but it was available to her.
Yeah, so we're not saying force people to eat.
Right.
We are saying if someone asks you for food, it is inhumane to deny them of that.
Yes.
In the sake of, like, well, I want them to die, and if I feed them, they might live longer.
Right. That's not okay. So this is what we are calling basic humane care. All right. Those things, ethically, that's a super black. Like, you cannot give away. So if you're looking at, you have your white, gray, black. So this is bad. Don't take those things away. Then we have kind of this gray area. Okay, I don't want to be treated for cancer. I don't want to be intubated. I don't want this medicine. I don't want this therapy. I don't want this intervention. Those are the things that should really only be arrived at after a great amount of discussion. And I would personally err on the side of more medical intervention versus less. And also encouraging that person, like, I love you. I will walk with you through this. You're not a burden. Making sure that if they're saying they're refusing cancer treatment, make it clear that your family is willing to walk through it with them, to walk beside them, if that's their choice, and not to make sure that they don't feel pressured to say, no, I don't want to be treated.
I think it's okay to let people know that, like, their decisions are painful. And I haven't had to walk through that with a family member, but if I did, like, I think it's okay if you have a family member who decides they're not going to have cancer treatments for XYZ. It's okay to let them know that you're going to be sad.
Yeah.
And that's not guilt tripping people into making a decision. Like, I think people want to feel missed.
Yeah. I would be devastated if I thought I could die and nobody would care.
Yeah, like, it's okay to let your loved ones know that, like, you want them to live.
Right.
Like, that's really not, again, a thing I didn't think was controversial, but apparently it is.
Right. And so there's a lot of really practical things that we can do as Christians. The first one is be aware of your elderly relatives, your elderly neighbors, the elderly at your church, those in your circle, of what they're going through, whether or not they have the support that they need, and whether or not they may be being pushed or pressured or forced into something that they don't want. And they may be embarrassed. Nobody wants to tell somebody that their kids offered to kill them.
Yeah, like what a weird,
how
like,
awful.
Yeah.
So ask questions, talk to them, offer to go with them to appointments if you can. Like, take them in as part of your family and love them, and make sure that they have the support they need at the end of life, because a lot of people aren't getting it from their families.
Yeah.
And then there's a few other things you can do. How do you protect yourselves? How do you protect your family? One of the things you can do is you can get a protective medical decisions document. So this document gives the agent of your choice authority to act on your behalf and take legal action to ensure that you and your rights are protected. So if there's someone in your community, maybe it's a church member, maybe it's a neighbor who feels like their child doesn't care about them and is going to push them into something that they don't want, especially if they're in a state that allows euthanasia, then they can list someone else. They don't have to list their child. And as long as they have something in writing saying that this person is the person who's allowed to speak for them, then they have to honor that. If someone's being placed in hospice care or a long-term nursing facility, like a nursing home or some other type of long-term care facility, do your research. Find out if they're connected to Compassion and Choices, formerly the Hemlock
Society.
Pay attention. If your loved one says, I want to die, ask them questions. Is someone, first of all, assure them, like, I love you. I want you to live. I love hanging out with you. I love spending time with you. I would miss you so much if you died. Because sometimes that's just like you're maybe reaching the end of life and you were feeling a little bit discouraged. Like, you can't live your life the way you want to. You can't get out and do things. And so people need that encouragement, and like encouragement that they are loved and that they are valuable and that they are an important part of your family. But also realize that if they're verbalizing that, someone in that facility could be listening to that verbalization.
Yeah.
And so make sure that you're communicating with staff that, like, hey, my mom's really struggling this week. And so if she starts talking like that, please call me, call my siblings, call the grandkids, and one of us will come in and spend time with her right away. Like, the staff shouldn't feel like, oh, well, maybe we should honor this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Check the medical files of you and your dependents for a document labeled, this is really important, the document labeled physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. It's also called a POLST, POLST. So these can be filled out unknowingly, because often the medical staff, and I'm not trying to say that medical staff are out there trying to cause problems.
Right.
They come into the room, you're not there, the person is by themselves maybe, or the person doesn't know that they're having a form filled out, or it just feels like a questionnaire, but they fill out this POLST, and it could conflict with, and it could supersede other well thought out advanced directives. Okay. So if you have a living will and you have this PMDD, this protective medical decisions document, a POLST can actually override these other documents.
Right.
It shouldn't,
no.
But it can.
So a decision, like a conversation that you have while you're in a hospital bed with no family members going through this thing, is going to override your well thought out plan.
Right. Okay. So you should check your record, if you're older especially, and check your parents' records and see if there is a POLST and see what it says. And if it does not, if it conflicts with what is actually desired and what is actually ethical, you need to have it pulled.
Yeah.
You need to have it pulled. And you need to make sure, you need to follow up until you're sure that it's pulled. Because sometimes it can take a while to get those things corrected.
Yeah.
The other thing is you have to ask questions and insist on answers. Now I can hear you right now, you people out there who are very sweet and very kind, and you don't like rocking the boat and you don't like making waves. Rock it. Rock the boat. Make the waves. If you ask a question about your loved one's end of life care and you don't think you got a good answer, you ask again and again and again, and you insist that someone come and explain it to you. Mm-hmm. Why are they getting this much morphine? Why are they getting this much painkillers? Why are we not doing this treatment? I remember when my grandmother had heart surgery, they had two options. She could have a mechanical valve, or she could have a valve from like a pig, which is still creepy to me. Mm-hmm. I was like, is she going to have pig dreams? You know how people say if you have like an organ, like you get an organ, you start to have dreams of like that other person's life?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, people claim that that's like a real thing.
I was just thinking back to like if you got raptured out, like is your valve
like
left behind,
just laying there on the sidewalk with your glasses and your fillings. Mm-hmm. That's a Tim LaHaye joke for those of you who
never had to read the Left Behind.
Yeah, this is why we were so frightened in the 2000s. Okay, so it was all Tim LaHaye. Anyway, he's great, by the way. Tim LaHaye, please sponsor us. Anyway, so they wanted to put in the pig valve, and my dad is like, why? And they're like, well, at her age. And he's like, no. He's like, we're not putting in a valve that's going to fail in 10 years. Absolutely not. He's like, she does not have, I think his words were, an expiration date stamped on her butt. Because that's exactly something my dad would say.
All right. There it is.
The only reason that they wouldn't do the mechanical valve, which would last like significantly longer, if not forever, I mean, essentially forever.
Right.
Is because you had to be on blood thinners. And he's like, she's already on blood thinners. So what's the benefit of not doing the mechanical valve? And the doctor got like super uncomfortable, but he was basically like, yeah, she'll definitely be dead before 10 years.
Yeah. So their only reasoning was her age.
Yes.
And not like, oh, well, it's a harder procedure or XYZ. Because, like they're, again, like we're talking about the gray area stuff. Right. Where if you didn't know, you would think, well, the doctor says that the pig valve is best.
Yeah, so we're going to do that.
And it's like, well, actually, the mechanical valve is best. And your doctor just said that because he thinks grandma's going to kick it.
Right. And the thing is, if we had gotten her the pig valve at the time, which I'm sure there's like a real name for it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that that's like in a coding somewhere.
Pig valve.
Pig valve. If we had gotten her that, she absolutely would have passed sooner because she would not have had the strength to withstand another heart surgery.
Yeah.
And it would have failed. But this time she wouldn't, and she had it. I mean, I loved her so much. She saved, I don't know if I ever even told you this. She saved a set of twins from abortion.
Aw.
One of her aides was, actually went through the abortion pill reversal because of my grandma.
Aw. That's nice.
Yeah. And if she had been gone.
So just to clarify, she lived longer than 10 years.
She did. She did.
Okay.
And it was beautiful. So ask questions and insist on answers. All right. And don't treat every medical professional like they're trying to shuffle you off this mortal coil.
Like,
they're not. They want to help you.
I do want to take a moment to be like, people in healthcare have crappy jobs.
They
do. Both literally and metaphorically.
There is literal and metaphorical crap.
And they deal through so much. And that's not to say that there aren't healthcare professionals who are not good at their job, who are not practicing the way that they should be practicing medicine. But do be kind to your healthcare workers.
Be kind to your web-footed friends.
What?
That's a quote from Dr. Seuss. Be kind to your web-footed friends, for they just might be somebody's mother. You don't know that?
No.
I think it's Dr. Seuss. It might not be Dr. Seuss.
Those were books. Why are you singing a song from Dr. Seuss?
Maybe it's not Dr. Seuss. I'll play it for you after we're done.
Whoever your web-footed friends are, I guess be nice to them as well, but also treat healthcare workers professionally and recognize that a lot of them are genuinely trying to do their best.
They want to help. They want people to live. That's why they got into it. And they want to do the best possible job they can most of the time. Now, are you going to have exceptions? Absolutely. But don't go in there guns blazing, assuming that everyone is out there trying to
get you and
you and your elderly relatives to not live. That's
because it is a hard field.
It is.
And these people are professionals. And I'm not saying that gives them a reason to gaslight you or that you're not smart enough, but there's something to be said for having a specialty.
Yes.
And specializing in something.
So ask questions, get answers, but also don't think that every single person is out there trying to get you.
Yeah, you can be on guard and not be a turd about it.
Yes, don't be a turd.
There's got to be a better way to say that, but
it
is
from
what
Sarah
it is.
and Mikayla. Don't be a turd. All right. The other thing you can do is be on the lookout for pro-euthanasia legislation. Okay. So we already have states. Oregon is one of them that has legalized euthanasia. There's countries that have legalized euthanasia. Belgium is a thought leader in this, unfortunately. But it could be coming to your state. So keep an eye on that. It is so under publicized. It is hard to get this information. It is hard. There aren't pregnancy centers are everywhere talking about abortion, right? And pro-life groups are everywhere. And there are pro-life groups that address the euthanasia issue, but it's usually in a much smaller way than addressing the abortion issue. And I think I think it's sneaking up on us.
Yeah, it's because we're busy with the abortion issue.
Right.
It's really hard to have two solid feet in two solid camps that are connected, but also very different.
Very different. Yeah. So, and then find out what your current state laws are. Do they allow euthanasia? And if they do, under what circumstances? And what could that possibly look like? And what can you do? The other thing you can do, and I realize that this may not be for everyone, and this may not be something that everyone wants to do, but one thing that we've talked about here at Promise of Life Network is we would love to have someone on staff who is very well versed in the euthanasia issue and who's able to work with families. So not actually provide hospice care, but work with families on how to ask the right questions and how to work through some of these thorny ethical issues. And maybe you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this is a big thing. I would love to get that program off the ground. If you're able to make a significant investment, I would love to talk to you about what that might look like. And that doesn't mean I can start it tomorrow. In case you're on my board of directors and you're listening to this and you're like, Sarah, you can't.
Give it at least a week.
I'm going to need at least a week before starting a new program.
Because I think, again, just like with the abortion issue, some people think it's just this one thing. And if we can get past this one thing, we're fine. And it's not. And so the euthanasia issue is not just are we outright giving people pills to kill themselves? There's all of this ethical decision making for end of life care that people need help navigating. So you might be well, I already know that we're anti-euthanasia. And that's great. We love that for you, that you know that you're anti-euthanasia.
Yes, that's good. Be that.
Be that. But also recognize that there's all of those medical decisions that play into it. So it's not just like the final pill, so to speak, or whatever, like mixing of pills that guy had going on last week. Couscous poison.
But the thing is, okay, so, and when you're in that situation and it's your mom or your husband or your wife or your child, it's hard to make decisions because you are overwhelmed and you're emotional and you want the best thing for them and you are sleep deprived, and it's really hard to know, did I make the right choice? And so in that moment, I want people to have someone to call. I want them to have a number of someone who is willing to not tell them what to do, but maybe give advice or information.
Walk through it with them.
Give them that support. And that's something that we just don't have right now. And so, I'd really love to do that someday. It's actually been in my back of my head for a little while. It would definitely be new. It's nothing that any other pregnancy center is doing.
I was about to say, I don't even know of most services that have, I mean, like, there might be a, quote, client advocate at a nursing home.
But you don't know what's their theory, like
what values they
have. Yeah. Right. And so I would like,
and churches are ill-equipped. Like, I mean, I love my church. I don't know that any of our elders or pastors are equipped to walk someone through end of life decisions like that. Yeah. Just because, like, it entails a lot.
It's a lot, and it's very specialized.
And my poor pastor is not a doctor.
No, and pastors are a great resource.
Absolutely,
absolutely. 100%. Call your pastor. Yes. But my vision is to have something that's dedicated to this.
Yes,
that can be part of your care team, like part of your representing you and encouraging you and giving you information. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but our Jesus moment is actually the Old Testament. So we'll call it the Angel of the Lord moment.
The angel. I appreciate that.
I love it. All right.
Your Old Covenant moment.
Our Old Covenant moment. So in 2 Samuel 1, and you can read 2 Samuel 1, we have an Amalekite. I don't know his name. Okay. Bob. Okay. An Amalekite comes to King David. I don't think he's actually, like, he's been anointed by the Lord at this point, but he's not, like, the official king. I'm not really sure when that actually changed. But anyway, he comes to David and asserts that he killed Saul. Okay, so the guy's actually lying. But he tells David he killed Saul because Saul asked him to, because he, the Amalekite, did not believe that Saul could continue to live. Okay, so Saul has been in battle, and this, according to this Amalekite, and this actually turns out to be like, this guy totally fabricated this, which is wild. But he tells David,
sounds familiar. Not that I'm making accusations, but it sounds familiar.
So, David executes the Amalekite for killing Saul, which is not what this guy was expecting.
Surprise!
He did not commend the Amalekite for killing his enemy or for killing someone who requested it and was likely going to die anyway. And this is before antibiotics, and like, if you've got a spear through the gut, you're not making old bones,
right?
Like, you're not buying green bananas at that point. So although the Amalekite was lying to gain favor with David, his account was not like an account of war. It was an account of mercy killing. And David was like, that's not it.
Yeah.
This ain't that.
Right.
In the message. That's not actually what the message, I don't know what the message says. But if Sarah had a message Bible, it would say this.
Paraphrase.
Yes.
Paraphrased. This ain't it.
Okay, so David could have said, "Oh, well, he was my enemy, so congratulations," which is probably
thanks for doing me a solid.
Which is probably what the Amalekite expected. Right. Or he could have said, "Well, I loved Saul and he was the Lord's anointed, but I'm so glad he didn't suffer." Did not say that.
Right.
David was like, No. He said Saul was the Lord's anointed, and you can't be going around killing people, which is
especially outside of war.
Right. Death happens in battle, absolutely. Yep. But this guy was claiming to have killed him after the battle.
Right.
So like
a mercy killing.
A mercy killing. And David was like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Not okay. And that's it, right? I don't know how else to sum this up. We don't kill people. We don't kill people if they want us to. We don't kill people if they are sad. We don't kill people if they are suffering. We will walk with them. We will help them. We will encourage them. We will make good end-of-life decisions, and that is our calling as believers.
Right. And there's not just two options. It is not people suffer or we kill them. Right. There are loads of things in between that can help ease suffering.
Yes.
And suffering is unfortunately a part of the human existence because of the fall. Right? Like we were
suffering and death. Yeah, we did get that before.
Yeah. Like we were not made to die.
Right. Which is weird because we always say like, "Oh, death is part of life." It's actually not.
Like
it wasn't supposed to be.
Right.
We were supposed to live forever, and so
like
it's weird.
Eve and her freaking apple, her giant grape or whatever fruit
it was.
Like Eve messed it all up. No,
yeah,
but
you
like
go to VBS and you tell kids that wasn't an apple, they will argue with you.
They will.
They're like, it's an apple, and I'm like, it's not.
Like, there's nothing that indicates that it was an apple.
Okay.
I mean, maybe it could have been, but like it sounds like it probably
wasn't.
Probably
wasn't. It was. I'm sure that God took that one off the shelf. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have it anymore.
Maybe.
Like, it's that's been recalled and discontinued.
Whatever it was, we were not designed to die, and death is now something that is a part of the human existence because of sin.
Yes.
And
that's why it's such a hard topic.
It is uncomfortable.
About. Yes.
And there's no good way to kill people.
There's not.
There are dignified ways of end-of-life care.
Right. And moral ways and ethical ways.
Yes, that are ethical
that honor God.
And biblical, and also are good health decisions for our loved ones.
Yes. So
they don't have to suffer.
More information on this, By Forced Exit by Wesley Smith. Look him up on YouTube. Look up Stephanie Gray and Euthanasia. She has some other pro-life stuff too. You can also buy our book, Courageously Pro-Life, at courageouslyprolife.com. As always, like and subscribe. And next week, we will probably also depress you, but it will be a different topic.
A different kind of depression.
Sorry, guys. Anyway, like and subscribe. Bye.